Okay, welcome everyone. Um, we'll start by trying to recap what we have done all through this semester. Let's start with the first. Let's start with our first, what we did in our first class, so that we'll just run through them quickly. Then run through them quickly. So let's start. Now, in our first session, what did we do? We tried to define what rural development is all about. First of all, we try to talk about the concept of rural. We said the concept of rural tends to talk about, in fact, became heightened because urban societies became quite a concept. Modern society created a new way of life, which was people trying to live in areas that are industrialized and sort of more modern. So ruralness became an issue because you cannot talk about poverty if there are no riches. So if everybody is poor, then poverty is just normal. But because people are rich, you cannot define poverty properly. Like you cannot define darkness in itself, but you can just define darkness in terms of light. Darkness simply means the absence of light. It's the same thing. You can't define poverty clearly if you don't understand riches. You can't define rural clearly if you don't see there's a contrast of somewhere called urban. So when we created modern societies, modern urban areas, rural societies became an issue to deal with. So we mentioned that concept of rurality at that point. We talked about how rural refers to maybe a population of people living in areas of low density and to small settlements. And we also said that there are wild variations in the cutting point used in operationally to differentiate between rural areas and urban areas. Because in some areas, people define an area as rural, and if you take that rural area to another side, it becomes urban because some communities are generally urban. So where they define as rural may just be urban in another side. So we talked about some of these little distinctions here and there. Then we finally came down to um, the types of criteria that generally are used to define a rural society. We said one, the number of inhabitants in that society determines if that society is rural or urban. Of course, we know that those in the rural areas are fewer than those that are in the urban areas in individual settlements. Individual settlements, not collectively. Now, we also said that the second criteria that generally used to define um, rural area is the ratio of inhabitants to open land, right? The ratio of inhabitants to open land. So, um, the third criteria generally that is used to define a rural society is the type of economic activities that goes on in such an environment. We said a rural society are those that are dependent on agriculture, mostly fishing, food production, and exploitation of raw materials. So once a particular people are dependent on nature to get their livelihood, we say that area is predominantly rural. Okay, let's move on. We are taking this one after the other. We're not expecting to go through them. But if you have any question, you can put up your hand. I will see your hand, electronic hand, I mean, and I will be able to stop, because today is not supposed to be for me. It's supposed to be for you, raising issues that you want us to talk about. You've attempted the discussion forum, and some of those questions, some of you have gone there to attempt it using AI, which is totally wrong. And we're not let's just leave it at that. It's totally wrong. So I'll just be raising some issues, concept that I think is important for us to note, and then keep going. So once I see your hands up or someone indicating that he wants to speak, I will stop. Okay. Now there are other various demographic criteria and various concepts that distinguishes rural from urban. Like you can see on your screen here, for a community as in Norway, it could just be different from how they define rural areas from urban compared to a community in Africa or in South America. All right. So let me move straight to the characteristics of a rural community. The first characteristics you see on the screen there is that they are relatively few people in and in a rural area. Relatively few people. When we say relatively few, doesn't mean that when you put all the rural societies together, they are few. No, when you put all the rural societies together, they entirely will be more than the urban societies put together as well. However, individual societies that are rural are relatively small compared to individual societies that are urban. For example, when you take Lagos, Lagos is not part of it. Let's take a place like let's use a place like okay, let me see a place like Benin or Edo State. For those that are familiar with the terrain, in Edo State, you have some clearly urban areas. Probably Awushi is urban, Benin is urban. Which other area is urban again? There are several society communities there that are urban. Okay, now, but at most, let's say six of those societies around that area is urban in Edo State. Six, seven, eight, probably. But beyond that, we have about 300 rural communities in the entire state, which means that when we put the 300 together, there will be more than the urban area put together. However, individual 300, that's one, two, three of the 300, can be so small that they cannot match with the urban areas. So that's what we mean by relatively few people in rural societies. Then we go down to number two. Rural society is characterized by the dependence of those in that area on natural resources. That is, they are primarily involved in primary production. They depend on natural resources, they depend on nature. Number three, limited educational opportunities after secondary school. That is what characterizes them in such a environment. And then we have number four, limited job demands and 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 opportunities for skilled and educational labor. Then we have absence of urban communities. Sorry, urban commodities like cafes, restaurants, um, theaters, galleries, and so on. Maybe fast food drawings and all that. So these are some characteristics of rural areas. Let's go straight to the function of areas. One of the key functions of rural is the major source of food production. The production of food and raw materials is basically the function of rural areas. From there, food items come to the urban areas. Okay. Then we also have the fact that rural society also function as suppliers of people to society, because all of us are from one rural community or the other, except those that are from state capitals and major urban areas. But apart from that, most of us are from rural areas, and from that rural areas we came to the urban area. So it is a major supply of people to the cities. And then number three, distinctive functions of rural society is that they are custodians of natural resources. Rural societies are custodians of natural resources. And then we have number 4, which is modern rural society increasingly serve as residential functions for persons with urban-centered source of livelihood. So you see people working in Lagos, they're working in Ibadan, and they want to just go back to the village and relax. So it serves as a residential area for them for rest. Then the final one is that at times the society, uh, when there are crises in societies, the rural society performs security functions. There's a crisis in the urban area, people run back to the rural society to go for to rest or to be secured. All right, let's move on. Okay, let's run quickly. Now, development. What's the meaning of development? Development simply means the general improvement in the economic, social, and political condition of the whole society in terms of reduction or elimination of poverty, inequality, injustice, insecurity, ecological imbalance, and unemployment within the context of a growing economy. That's one definition for you. Okay, so that's one definition for you. So you can take that definition and use it in case you are asked during your exam period. All right. Now there are other definitions of development. We say development generally entails a shift, upward shift, positive shift from one end to another over a period of time. This is a positive development because sometimes development can be negative depending on the situation. But this is not the kind of development that we are discussing in this course. Development goes beyond just increasing per capita and financial aspect of people's lives. It includes change in institutional, social, and administrative structures, as well as social behaviors of the people, attitude of the people, including the customs and beliefs. It should be noted that development is continuous and it is unending. It just keeps going on and on and on. So that's for development. Okay. Now let's talk about the dimensions of development. We have talked about this earlier, but let's just run through it quickly. Development could be in the social dimension or sexual development of the society, economic development dimension, political dimension or development, cultural development, and religious development. These are easy to understand. Okay. Now, what are the steps in bringing about development? You know, most times when you try to develop a place, most people try to guess, guess what the people need. No, don't worry. That's nothing really scientific. Don't guess. Just carry out a survey. A survey simply means fact finding and identify the community concerned by giving them either a questionnaire to fill or you interview them. You would easily spot what the problem is. Then you solve it and development happens. Number 2, identification of small group leaders and interest groups who can serve as initiating sets. So when you identify group leaders, of course, they will initiate it, they will tell you what the predominant issue is, and they will start the process of development. Of course, that is by even talking to other people to welcome the development when it starts. Number 3, identification of immediate community problem. Of course, with the first two, you can identify the immediate problem. Number 4, sharing of problems identified with community leaders to legitimate it. That is, I found out you people have issue of security in this area. And we found out that you have issue of education. We found out that you have infrastructural deficit. What do you say? So the community leader will say, yes, so we have educational problem, we have security problem, but the greatest of which is security problem. That one. We'll call our brothers in diaspora to help us with education. You see that? So identification is good. Sharing the problem with community leader is good to legitimize or legitimate the to get yourself authentic issues with the leaders. Now, number 5 says diffusion of problems and definition of needs. Then we move to 6, which is securing citizens' commitment to act and identification of needed resources. Then we have appraising of available internal resources. Now, sometimes you may ask the question, why do you need to appraise? Why do you need to appraise internal resources and the invitation of external aids where necessary? The issue is this. If you are bringing about development without carrying the people along, those to whom you want to bring the development to, oftentimes it has been known that the people will not appreciate it. And when they don't appreciate it, something happens. What is that? They tend to work against it. You see, so carrying the people, getting the citizens' commitment is very important, and then checking to know whether you can use any of the resources they have within the organization, within the community, is also very important to to attract the interest of the people. So if they say we need men, 200 men, try and source those men, workmen from the community as internal resource first. If they say they have they'll need to buy sand and all that, try and buy from the community first. That way you cement the commitment of the people. Then the next is formulation of a detailed plan of action on how to or action of plan of action, including a timetable on how to execute your development plan. Very, very important because you can't succeed without a plan. Then we now have carrying out the action itself. Then we now talk about identifying problems that needs correction, problems that are derived from the issue that you are trying to solve. Try to solve that. So that was what we did in our first session. I don't know if you have questions so that we can attend to that questions now before we move to the next session, which was the second class in this series. Any questions, please? Guys, any question? Anybody with a question, or should I continue? All right, I will continue. Okay. Now we had a second session, and that second session was on the meaning of rural development. The meaning of rural development. So let me share my slides. Okay, I'll continue. The second day or the second session we had, we talked about the meaning of rural development and try to define it. What did we say? Let me show you. We said rural development can be viewed as the development of the moral, social, political, and economic potentialities of the rural community to enhance their self-reliance through provision of appropriate infrastructure such as pipeline water, electricity, rural roads, small-scale industries, increase which tend to increase their political consciousness, participation, and promote their moral and social well-being, which will result in tolerance, good discipline, justice, fairness, kindness, love, and peace. So this is a comprehensive definition of rural development. The target is the rural populace, and we're trying to bring about development in their infrastructure as well as in their way, their mind, because tolerance is an attitude thing. Good discipline is an attitude thing. Justice, fairness, kindness, love, and peace, these are attitudinal things. Now, another definition says that rural development is a process, the process of making life more satisfying and fulfilling for the millions of people who live in rural areas. So you see, this definition is shorter, but tends to be straight to the point. So we move on to, we said the definitions we had, there are three important features that you can get from that definition. The first is that rural development targets the improvement of the living standard of the subsistent population, which involves the mobilization and allocation of resources so as to reach a desired balance over time between the welfare and the productive services available to the rural subsistent population. So the first thing you will see in that definition is that the definition is talking about affecting the living standard of the population in the rural areas by improving how their productive services can be assessed. Number two that you can see from that definition of rural development is that it encourages mass participation. And that mass participation requires that resources be allocated to low-income regions and classes, that the productive service actually reaches them. And the third side to the definition is that is making the process self-sustaining. One, it points out that rural development is a process, and that process needs to be self-sustaining. That's those in the rural area should be part of it so that it can be sustained because it's a process over time. Keep happening. It takes steps. It goes from one step to another, from one step to another, and that is how it is. Okay, now let's go to the goals of rural development. In our second session, we talked about the goals. What is rural development going for? What is it hoping to achieve? The first is that it hopes to generate, or we can say, generation of new employment. Because if you want to develop the people in the rural area, if they are not productively employed, their per capita income can't increase. They cannot be happy. There's something about work people don't take into consideration. If you are an expert, probably you code, probably you are a teacher, probably you are a physicist, you are a pilot, or you are a lecturer, a scientist. If you don't work for a very long time, you will lack the capacity, you will lack the self-confidence to use the skill that you had gotten in the past. You were able to mix some chemicals and achieve some kind of result in the lab. But once you've not worked for a very long time, you start losing your self-confidence. That's what happens when you do not work. Work is psychological. It tends to give confidence. The more work you do, the more confident you are in doing it and in going further to do even something even more. So one of the goals of rural development is to generate new employment. And the more employment opportunities that there are, the more confident the people in the rural areas are. Now, number two goal of rural development is more equitable access to arable land. Of course, some of us, we say, in the villages, in the rural areas, there's so much land everywhere. But the problem with the land is that we have a land tenure system that fragments our land. What do we mean by that? Land tenure system that fragments the land simply means that land tenure system simply means land ownership, all right? Now, how do we own land? Check it for those from the west, for those from the east, for those from the north. I don't know how it happens in the south side, but however, in the east, a man owns a large portion of land. He divides that land across his sons, probably has 4 sons. So we divide the land and they will take it as their inheritance. I think that's what happens in most part of the country. Now, if an industrialist wants to use your land for farming, he has to negotiate with the 4 brothers so he can use the entire land. And he could negotiate with brother A, brother B, and brother C will refuse. And then brother D will agree. So the land is not in whole again. He has to use 1, 2, and leave 3, then 4. But for the farm to be successful, he has to use the entire portion of land. You see it. So that's what we call fragmentation. You discuss with this community to take this person. You discuss with this community to take this person. And inside this community, you have to discuss with 20, 30 persons, and it becomes really hard. In some advanced countries, the government has a power to allocate large portion of land and then pay the people that own it some money as royalties for the use of their land in bulk. So you see that uh, equitable access to arable land is one of the goals of rural development. Then number 3, widespread improvement in health. Of course, if you don't have health, you can't work. And no matter the number of land you have, if you don't have health, you can't access it. If you don't have health, you can't be employed. So improvement of health is part of the goal of rural development. And then nutrition and housing. It's only a man that is safe in a house. It's only a man that is safe health-wise that can access food, that can access work. Okay. Then another goal of rural development is broadening the opportunity for all individuals to realize their full potential through education. That is presenting opportunity for all in the rural area to be educated. Another goal of rural development is that it is a strong voice for providing or presenting or creating a strong voice for all rural people in shaping their decisions and actions that affect their lives. Okay, then we have rural development process. What do we mean by rural development process? In most African countries, including Nigeria, have been um, there are several approaches to rural development. So all the approaches that we've adopted across Africa in Nigeria is what we refer to as the rural development process. So in Nigeria, we have various traditional approaches in use. All right, and the author Akali classifies these approaches as rural-urban interaction, one approach. Then the second approach is intersectoral or zonal coordination approach. And then the last is the packaged approach. All right. So what do we mean by rural-urban interaction? This simply means the process. This process actually focuses on planning of rural development along with or within the framework of the National Development Plan. Within the framework of the National Development Plan. You know, if recently I saw on the internet where somebody went back as far as the 70s and brought not 70s, around the 60s and brought out the development plan for the southeast and how the plan was meant to be executed with internally generated funds, and the plans were supposed to run for 10 years somewhere, planned to run for more than that. And you see, these plans are plans that government puts in place to develop an area. And of course, some of those areas can be developed in 2 days. It has to run for several years and continuously for some development to happen. Remember, we said development is a process, it's not just an act. So the rural-urban interaction approach to rural development is a development plan in which the plan of rural development is embedded into a national development plan. Provisions for the rural development is integrated within the agricultural development agenda for the local government, for the state, and for the federal government. That way, they can work and run smoothly. But of course, some of these things have failed over the years. Then we have the second approach, which is the intersectoral or zonal coordination approach. This approach or process is the process that involves the coordination of other isolated sectoral and zonal development programs, a coordinated approach. All the programs that are existing, this particular approach brings them all together. Because why is it done like that? Is because we assume that all these zonal and development programs are well conceived by their own rights. However, they need to handshake, they need to work in unison to really affect the rural area, to be effective in bringing about rural development. So these development programs have been affected by several issues, and some of them have not functioned as they should. Now we have the packaged approach. This particular approach is a process founded on the diffusionist theory of development in which innovations developed from outside of an area are brought to the rural dwellers by a presumed change agent. Now, virtually all rural development programs are developed in different areas. Different models are developed in different areas, are migrated to other areas. All right, so it's not a new thing. So all rural development programs we have in Nigeria are virtually brought from outside. We have examples like Operation Feed the Nation, the National Accelerated Food Production Program, the Agricultural Development Program, among other programs. But we have observed that most of them have had issues. Okay, this is the second class we had. So we move to the third. So if I see your questions, I will stop and give you opportunity to ask. But let us run through them quickly. This is the third. The third. Let me go to the second. Let's go to the third class we had in this series. The third, let me switch quickly. Now, the third was we discussed the rural development objectives as well as rural development principles. Rural development objectives and rural development principles. I just hope you can see my screen. Okay, now this is it. So let's jump straight to it. Objective of rural development. One, to promote the social, cultural, and economic well-being of the rural people. Number two, promotion of sustained and orderly development of the vast resources in the rural area for the benefit of the rural people, principally, and the nation as a whole. You know, to bring about development in the nation, people think you just do magic. No, 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 no. You don't do magic. You don't do magic. It has to start from a very micro unit. And those micro units are rural communities, those small communities. You are developing them and you're moving up, up, up. You know, the bottom top approach, most people that advocate it have said that development coming from bottom tends to be more sustainable than the ones that are coming from up down, from the government, federal government down to the state to rural. But when you take it from rural, state, and urban, and federal, it tends to be more sustainable. So the second approach is to promote sustained and orderly development of the vast resources in the rural areas for the benefit of the rural people, principally, and then the nation as a whole. Then the third objectives of rural development is increase in and diversification of job opportunities and improvement of income in the rural area. You know, some people in the rural area, certain things happen. We see a teacher, two people, one in the urban area, the other one in the rural area. Two of them are teaching mathematics and they are quite good in what they do. But the one in the urban area, like I heard, I had not seen, but I heard that some teachers teach extramural classes in Lekki area, Victoria Ireland area, and they charge as much as 500,000 per child. But in some rural areas, nobody even pays you up to 50,000 per child. They may just be paying you 15,000, 20,000, and yet it's the same mathematics, the same formulas, almighty formulas you are teaching the students. And you ask a simple question: why is one paid more in this area and the other one is paid less in this area? It's just simple. It's because the opportunities are very, very few in certain areas and the opportunities are more in certain areas. And then the production cost for that labor, or we call it the cost of labor in such an area, is more appreciated, and the cost of labor in another area is not even appreciated at all. So these are some of the things. So the more we increase in and the diversification of job opportunities and improvement in income in the rural areas, the more those in the rural areas earn more for what they put in. Now, the fourth objective of rural development is mobilization of rural population for self-help and self-sustaining programs. And the fifth is the upliftment of technological-based industries in rural areas. In the urban areas, you see these technological-based industries, they strive. They are working very well. But in the rural areas, they just don't work like that. Why? It's because these industries, they handshake. You need light for them to work. You need the experts for them to work. You need the environment for them to work. You need someone to patronize them for them to be existing in such a place, and so on and so forth. But in the villages, if you're or the rural areas, in the rural areas, if you cite such in the technological based companies, who will patronize them? Who will be the experts that wants to live there, and all that? So you need to understand these situations. You need to understand it. So these are the objective of rural areas. Now, facilitating factors that help achieve rural development objectives. We said farmers and small rural entrepreneurs should be regarded as a centerpiece of rural development strategy. The government should play a minimal role. You see, this particular facilitating factor is what causes a lot of problem. You know, there's this idea that people in the rural areas, they feel that government should do this, government should, and any money that comes to the village, they will want to finish it and eat it up because they think government is their national cake. They're not supposed to put in any effort at all. And that way, government now plays 100% of the role rather than being a catalyst, rather than being facilitators. They are directly involved in everything in the rural area, which is not that good. Like we said, it's rural development is a process, meaning the people there should be part of it so as it is sustained. Government should play a minimal role. They should just go there, catalyze the whole thing. That is trigger things to start happening and leave. So that those things they trigger will keep working by themselves organically. That's the only way rural development will happen. Right. So the third facilitating factor is to ensure continuity and acceptance. That externally induced projects are short-lived. Rural residents should be involved in the identification, formulation, implementation, and evaluation of rural development projects. I said this earlier, and that is one of the facilitating factors that will help rural development to happen. The people in the village, the residents, should be part of the process of identifying the problem, should be in the part of the process of formulating the solution, should be part of the process of implementing and evaluating such a project. I'm not saying the experts should not be there, but those in the rural areas should just be there. They may not be the expert executing it, expert formulating it, expert identifying it, but they should be part of the process so that they will appreciate what is coming to them. Now, the fourth factor that helps facilitate rural development objective is that rural development strategies should emphasize institutional coordination. That is, if you're developing something, developing the rural area through education, you're developing the area through road, through industry, through different sectorial implementation and intervention. They must, and you're using different models and coordinated programs. Those programs should have inter-institutional coordination, that they should be interministerial linkages, interdepartmental linkages, that they should handshake. Let me give an example. There's a particular family I know of, the man and the wife, they always are quarreling. And because they're always quarreling, the woman will go leave the house in the morning, and when she's coming back, she will buy bread that they will eat in the morning. And when the man is coming back in the evening, he will buy bread again that they will eat in the morning. But because they are quarreling, there's no interconnection. They are not coordinated. So they are wasting their resources. Are you seeing it? So they buy things that they don't need, or they buy things and they overstock the house because two of them are trying to buy and they're not linking and coordinating. So things get bad. The bread becomes spoiled because they have too much bread in the house. But if the woman could just say, "Oh, guy, if you're coming buy bread, oh, let me buy this." That way they will save the money because they were talking and they were connected. The same thing happens in the rural area. You see a community say these ones are coming to put borehole for them. The other one is coming to put borehole for them. At the end of the day, they have two boreholes. They are not using it. Waste of resources. You see it. They just come to the two projects are coming to execute one thing. That is why if you go and audit the maybe Niger Delta project, you see that in one community they've done one road 10 in the last 5 years because they are not coordinated. The government does the road, the other one comes and does the same road. And of course, you understand how corruption works. If they come and they see the road is done, they will say they've done it and snap a picture and go and put it in their file. But if you don't have those coordination, you keep wasting resources. Then number 5, development services and amenities should be functionally integrated across different levels of human settlement. That means in the rural areas, don't just do education and leave water, don't just do road and just go through the sectors and let everything be balanced in your approach. Now, what are the indications that rural development has started happening? In your questions, you may say, they may ask you, what are the indicators of rural development? What are the indices of rural development? That is, they are all the same thing. So one of the ways you will know that rural development has happened is that you will see an increase in per capita income of the people living in that environment. Number 2, you will observe that there are more even distribution of income. That you will not see people that are extremely rich and people that are extremely poor. That's a challenge. So more even distribution of income will happen, and then that is an indication that rural development is happening. Then another indication or indices of rural development is the reduction in the level of unemployment. That means people start having things to do. Let me give you an example. When the 2023 election was done in Enugu State, at least I know of that, the governor decided that he's going to implement a statewide development plan. Statewide development plan. Of course, most of the communities in the state are rural, so there were rural development plans everywhere. What happened? A lot of people were agitating. Of course, in the Southeast, a lot of people were agitating. The government didn't do where they wanted to secede. And there were all those type of talk and all that. Of course, people were saying that, but not everybody was subscribed to it. However, the unrest and unhappiness were everywhere because the government was just not doing as it should. But this new government came in and said, okay, statewide development. Every community had one presence of one project or the other. And what did that do? That project employed artisans. Whatever the project employed, skilled men, employed the intellectuals, employed almost everyone. And that reduced unemployment rate. It translated to something. What was that? A lot of people that had time to foment trouble and go and fight, do trouble here and there, were gainfully employed. And when they got employed, what next? The trouble level in the state reduced. That's what rural development does. Once people start getting employed, they don't have time for alternative work. It's when you don't see anything to do, you start looking for trouble. Number two there. Number four there says diversification of the economy. Of course, as the smart schools in Enugu State has kicked off and the buildings have been built, the buildings will require maintenance. So workmen will continue working, contractors continue working, and that way school is developed, the artisan area is developed. In a short while, they say, oh, the school needs electricity, electricity is put, and the sector of electricity is developed. So you see the economy is diversifying, not just government driven now. It now becomes private partnership will show up. Some people providing solar panels will come up, and the economy is just being revitalized here and there. There's diversification from maybe we depending purely on government and we start doing things ourselves. Increase in this, another indication of rural development is increase in supply of high level manpower. That is what education empowers. Then we have balanced development. All the sectors are being developed at the same time. Then we have indigenization of economic activities. Not everything is foreign. All our economic activities must not be imported. So we start indigenizing our economic activities. Then we have good health. People start generally having good health and proper standard of living. Then we see acquisition of technology. There's something you must give to Nigeria at this time. You will go to one very remote area of the village, you will see somebody there and the person is connected to the internet. That is a sign that development has gotten to such a place. It's an indication. Now, what are the principles of rural development? The principles, principles are laws that apply and and they work everywhere, anytime, once they have been established as a principle. So, the principle of rural development is one, accessibility, independence, sustainability, effectiveness, and participation. If you want rural development to be successful, it should be accessible. Meaningful rural development program must ensure that the program is accessible to all the rural dwellers. You are not selecting who it to be accessible to. It has to be accessible to all. That way, the development will work. Number two, independence. This simply means that any rural development plan should be such that helps and supports the rural dweller, but does not make their livelihood 100% dependent on the program. So it must have a level of independence. The rural dweller or the rural developer should always try to ask questions like, if this program is discontinued, if I'm no longer implementing this program, what will happen to the beneficiaries? Can they continue and sustain this program? That is what we mean by independence. Then we have the next, which is sustainability. It's linked to the independence. It simply means the program plan and solutions are relevant to the local social life, economic life, or administrative condition of the targeted rural population. The program should not be determined before the stated objective of such program is achieved. And then the fourth is effectiveness. Every good rural development program should be based on the effective use of local resources. And then lastly, participation. I've mentioned this before. Participation of the beneficiary, that is the rural populace in the program, is very, very important if you want to sustain such a program. All right, that was the third facilitation session we had. Let's see, someone is saying something. Okay, we don't have anything said. Okay, so we'll just. All right, thank you very much, Godwin. I saw your comment. So let's share another of our slide. Let's see. Let's see if we can run one more before I run away. I have another class after this. So let's move to the fourth. Our fourth class. That doesn't mean you will not read your lecture materials. Or we talked about the approaches to rural development. I think I should run through this one quickly. The approaches to rural development and why is rural development necessary. We mentioned three approaches: the reformist approach, the structural approach, and the technological approach. All right. And we said the reformist approach, what is its target? Its target is the rural change of the rural people. The approach to rural development, it says they want to change how the people behave. And if you change how they see things, how they behave, rural development will happen. I remember using an illustration to explain this. Let me run this one quickly. A friend of mine that went into a community to carry out a project. I think it was a road construction project or something. It's a civil engineering project. And when he got there, he brought his equipment to site, immobilized equipment, and then wanted to start. And this is a community that didn't have an access road that connects them to modern societies, connect them to the city. And they were about to start the road. The community, the same people in the community, rose up and came to protest. They came to attack him, say he should give them money before he constructs their road. And he was wondering that why will I give him money? It was not part of the budget. They said if he does not give them money, they won't allow him construct the road. They put a lot of demands. He called the bosses, and the bosses asked him to carry his things and leave that place. Of course, before he left, he has started the job already. He has cracked some part of the road. He has dug holes here and there. But the road has not been done, and he had to leave. You see, that is a problem. It's a mind problem. It's a behavioral problem. The people feel that anything you want to do for us, you pay us first before you do it. And that is really, really a negative behavioral attitude of rural people. So the reformist approach to rural development says, first of all, emphasize behavioral change in the rural dwellers, in the rural farmers. And that effort is made to find ways and means through which the rural dwellers or the farmers can play an important role in rural development. And they can only play that role if their behavior has been tweaked for positivity. Then the second approach is the technological approach. This approach talks about technological transformation of different aspects of the rural area, particularly agricultural production. It could also mean a shift from the use of local farming implements to the use of semi-modern technologies in farming. All right, in insecticides application, in pesticide farming, fighting in storage facilities, use modern technology, and that is what this one is talking about. Then we have the structural approach. The structural approach to rural development seeks to transform the existing economic, social, and political relationships in the rural area in such a way that those who were previously disadvantaged find their positions changed. All right. So the social, political, and economic relationships that need to be changed include the relationship between the landlords and the tenants. Of course, in the rural area, people come to farm and then they hire lands, and then there's an attitude of a landlord-tenant relationship that may not be progressive. Then we also have the problem of between poor peasant farmers and money lenders, problem between farmers and traditional rulers, between poor peasant farmers and the middlemen. These are structural issues. So the structural transformation of rural communities is attained through what is known as agrarian reform. Agrarian simply means agricultural reform, all right? Most of which are concerned with land distribution, the payment thereof, and all the relationships around it. So it's a structural thing. So the rural development seeks to use that approach to bring about development. Of course, if the structure is bad, you can't really achieve anything using it. Okay, Now let's move to the problems of rural areas. We said the first problem is the vicious cycle of poverty. The second is a poor rural infrastructure like roads, education, and all that. Then we have high population density where people are so many in a place. It's difficult to deal with them all. It's difficult to attend to them all. Then we have high level of illiteracy. There's something about illiteracy. If you are ignorant, you're a problem. It's a serious problem because illiteracy is just so bad that you start messing things up. I remember a story I read somewhere. I think I don't know the country, but an African country, solar panels were installed to generate electricity to power a borehole, a local borehole for the people to have water. So now the local juju man in the community told them that the solar panels that were installed to stop the rain from falling so that hunger will kill them. And the people believed it. They believed such a ludicrous kind of talk. They believed it. And they took sticks, cutlasses, spears, and all that and went and broke the uh, solar panels. Of course, when they break those solar panels, there goes the power that powers their water. So they lost the panels, they lost the water, and they're back to their poverty. They're back to their poverty. So you see it. And why is it so? Is it because they didn't have someone to help them? They had, but they had illiteracy as an issue. They were poor in the mind. They were unable to understand things. They were unable to read and write. So their poor understanding was cashed in by the local juju man, and they used it to hurt themselves. Number five problem of rural areas is low social interaction and local politics. Then we have harmful traditional practices. I remember we talked about it some time ago. We talked about it some time ago. Harmful traditional practices. Let me see. Sorry, you're not seeing what I was saying. So, harmful traditional practices. I remember I mentioned Godwin will attend to your question very soon. We talked about harmful traditional practices, and we mentioned the fact that some communities they ban people from coming out on some particular days, and that becomes an issue because modern society don't have a break. That is why you see people operating these days 24 hours, 24 hours, 7 days a week. So those harmful traditional practices could just be anti progress. And we have lack of employment opportunities. These are problems that besiege rural areas and then rural urban migration. Of course, because labor is paid for more in the urban areas, people tend to move from the areas to the urban areas so that they can get more for their efforts. Then why is it necessary for rural development in Nigeria? One, the reason why we must implement rural development is because rural people constitute the vast majority of people of the Nigerian population. Simple. Two, most of the food which Nigerians eat come from rural areas, so it's important rural development happens. Three, much of the country's agricultural needs for raw materials and subsequent industrial and economic growth are produced in rural areas. So you see, there's a necessity for rural development. Now we have two of the five national objectives as stated in the national policy on education are one, to build a just and egalitarian society, and two, to build a united, strong, and self-reliant nation. These two objectives are related and tied to the rural areas. Number five, inequality exists in social and educational amenities between urban and rural areas, and that is why rural development is very, very needed, necessary. And then we have inequalities that exist in the living standards when you compare rural dwellers and urban dwellers. That is why it is necessary that most rural dwellers live below poverty levels, which calls for urgent attention. Okay, that is about it. Let's take some questions because it's almost time up. so I can attend to another class. So now you can unmute yourself, ask me a question. Let's run through it quickly before I jump out of this place. So,
good evening,
to answer
sir.
your question, Godwin, can you speak?
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir.
Sure, Godwin. If you can,
Thank you
I'll hear
very
you
much.
now.
Sir, please, what are the steps to take in terms of developing a rural community to avoid conflict?
Please come again. I didn't hear you very well.
What are the steps to take in terms of developing rural community to avoid conflict?
Remember what we said earlier. You must incorporate the people in the rural area. First of all, the problem identification. I think I gave you a list of that thing. Which particular slide did I use for that now? Let me see if I can get it quickly. We said your problem identification, formulation, implementation, and another thing. I can't remember the slide again. But that is the sequence. You must first of all carry out a survey. And that survey helps you to identify the problem. And then you carry the people along, the rural dwellers along, participation of the rural dwellers. And once they are part of it, you are sure that you will achieve what you are set out to achieve. Then you use internally generated resources from within the community. Then you have a clear-cut timetable of what you want to do as a rural development plan. First, second, third, and fourth thing you want to do. And once you have done that, the next will be to carry out the real rural development program. Once you have done that, then you evaluate the entire process from beginning to the end. Again, because once you evaluate, you realize that, oh, I didn't do this well at this particular point. Oh, I did this, but I didn't complete it. Then you can now do it. Remember, we say rural development is a process. So it's not like if you just do it, you are done. Once you are done, you will start again. You roll that process around again, and then you keep going. All right, that's about it.
Thank you
Rachel,
very
I
much,
don't know if I
sir.
answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much,
Okay.
sir.
All right, guys, look at the chat. I posted links to all the videos that you will need for this particular class. You can click on each one on the chat box. It will take you straight to where you will you watch the video. All right, but with this particular class, it's easy now. If you watch this particular one again and again, you can remember certain things we have said. And as it's our tradition, while you are there at the YouTube page, you can click on the content, click on the notification button so that whenever we have new content, you can watch it. Subscribe to it. We also have our link there, Facebook link. You can also encourage me by joining or following me there so that any content I have, you can also read it. All right, I appreciate those of you that keep coming. And I hope that this course is not just about passing an exam. I hope that it's going to help you not just as a student, but when you come out, you work, you are in the rural areas, and you are able to bring about change in your immediate space and the space where you find yourself. And Nigeria will be better off for it. All right. Thank you guys for joining. I hope to see you guys later. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Ejibon4. You guys were great. Thanks for joining. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, Oga.